So something I think you see a lot more of in recent years is how some F1 teams try to own or claim a particular Formula One driver, not as in property or anything, but more just try and claim him as if he's one of their own. Like he's part of the family and this team helped make this driver. Which is pretty much not just the team responding to the driver's record, but also the public's opinion of what team the driver is most well known for. For example, we see guys like Ayrton Senna, who is McLaren through and through. Or Nigel Mansell, who has Williams running through his veins. Or of course Michael Schumacher, who is and forever will be Ferrari. Teams now realise that alongside their current driver lineup, these past driver names have value and are even their own brands in some cases. Which is why now, alongside the merch that the teams have available for the current season, you can find special collections or retro or vintage ranges giving a nod or paying tribute to some of the greats. And even just maybe a special time in the team's history as well. Or if a team needs to do a bit of social media, demo an old car, or even a bit of promo, bring in one of the old boys. The fans will absolutely lap it up. But I sense that all of it is based around the public's perception and also their approval. Because most of these drivers, like many other greats, have driven for other teams besides the team that they're most well known for, which I think sometimes can result in a bit of a tug of war, especially if this particular driver is of legend status between two or more teams. And sometimes it can get a bit messy or a bit political, especially when the driver in question isn't with us anymore, so therefore you have the family, the driver's estate, making all decisions surrounding the name and also in some cases the brand. So let's jump in and take a closer look, but don't forget to click that little subscribe button before we do. So from what I see and understand, it all stems from the team responding to the public's opinion of what team a driver is most well known for. And through an agreement made with the driver or the driver's family / estate, this is then brought into full swing. So let's use Ayrton Senna for example. For the vast majority of people, he will be forever connected to McLaren. That iconic Marlboro livery and that yellow helmet are just one thing for most people. He did drive for others, but quite rightly McLaren have claimed him as one of their own. And through an agreement with the Senna family, his name, his image, rights, everything will most likely be connected to McLaren forever. But then because Senna began his career at Toleman, who have now evolved into Alpine that we have today, you could also see that team try and push for a connection. And in fact, we did see this recently when Gasly took one of Senna's old Tolemans around a track for a spin. Actually, that video was pretty great, to be fair. And also, Williams carried the Senna logo on the car for 27 years since his death. It was quite a tasteful tribute, but they probably know not to push any further from there into the realms of merchandise or anything, as that subject of Senna and Williams is probably best left alone. So when you get down into the nitty-gritty of it, what McLaren have there is not just an icon and a legend of the sport, it's also a very powerful marketing tool, and a very lucrative one too, and one apparently that no other teams can really touch. McLaren Automotive have named a car after him, and the F1 team now has a whole new Senna collection in their merchandise store. And whilst on the surface it's a great way to pay tribute to a legendary driver, but let's kind of get real here. It's all about making money at the end of the day. Rewinding the clock a little bit further back to 2019, shortly after Niki Lauda passed away, we saw some very nice and very tasteful tributes at the Monaco Grand Prix, which was shortly after the announcement. But I felt we were presented with this kind of bizarre situation where it seemed two or more teams were sort of fighting over him a little bit. And what I mean is these handful of teams were trying to be the one to put themselves forward, saying, we are Niki's real team here. And then they're kind of looking sideways at the other ones, wondering, what the hell are you doing? One of the most prominent, of course, at the time was Mercedes. At the time of his death, he was the non-executive chairman at Mercedes. He had never driven for any of the team's previous identities, but despite that, Mercedes honoured him with some tributes on the car. A red Mercedes star on the airbox, which I think still continues to this day, and even naming a street after him near the factory. And also leaving his headset vacant at the Grand Prix itself. Actually, the headset one is probably the most poignant and meaningful one of them all, I think. Meanwhile, at Ferrari, where he won 2 world championships and 15 Grand Prix, laid on their own tributes with his name on the car in that really classic font that you used to see in his ones, and also Vettel sporting a tribute helmet design as well. Meanwhile, whilst this was all going on, Hamilton also had a tribute helmet design, so maybe it was a bit especially as they were fighting for the championship at the time. And then you had McLaren, where Lauda won a single world championship and won 8 Grand Prix. They were more subtle with a little tribute to him on the airbox of the car, but also they did build a bronze statue back at the factory. Now, to be fair, everyone did it very well. It was all very dignified and it was all very respectful, and everyone did a really great job of showing tributes and everything. But behind closed doors, I just sensed that there was a real kind of tussle between the teams as to who was really Lauda's team. And then moving back into the present day, Williams are now running a campaign called the Michelob Ultra Lap of Legends. Yeah, which features Williams legends such as Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, and Jenson Button, and Mario Andretti as well. Now, Andretti is a legend, don't get me wrong, but he had just one race start with Williams, and that was also a DNF, so not quite sure about that one there. I guess he might have been last minute because bringing in Nelson Piquet, I suppose, wasn't really an option. And also, nothing against Jenson, absolutely loved watching him through his career. I was a big fan of his. But he doesn't strike me as a Williams legend because he only spent 1 season there and is also currently a senior advisor, whatever that means. Now, if any team can claim Jenson, it would surely be Brawn GP, who are now Mercedes. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes don't want anything to do with the team pre-2010. But then you think, hang on, he was at McLaren. He won 8 Grand Prix there during the Vettel years as well, which is still very impressive. So you think, why don't McLaren bring him on board and be part of the team? So with that, I think if Williams want to make him one of theirs and bring him into them to be part of the family, then I say, crack on. Good on you, Jenson. But looking at the rest of those names, it's pretty clear that those are Williams guys through and through, whether it's Mansell, Hill, and Villeneuve. Yes, they all drove for other teams, but off the top of your head, you can't imagine them in anything else apart from blue. Except maybe for Villeneuve, who might wake up per night screaming over that zipper livery on the BAR. But all of those guys are solid Williams drivers, except for one guy whose past is a little bit complicated, and that man is Alain Prost. Now, whilst he won his final world championship with Williams and is now doing his campaign with the team, no matter how hard the marketing tries to get you to see him as being part of the Williams family, as this guy in blue, the world will always sort of see him as a McLaren guy. And I don't blame the public. He spent 7 years in McLaren, he won 3 world titles there, and even after he retired, he still flirted with McLaren and Ron Dennis and did some testing and helped out and all that sort of thing. So it's cool that he's doing all this stuff with Williams, but with his record at McLaren, it kind of seems a bit of a waste that they don't have him on board representing McLaren. Because if anyone talks about Prost and McLaren, the Senna name also comes into the picture as well. Because while Senna gets heaps of recognition and tributes from McLaren, Prost seems to be shunned a little bit and I sense doesn't get the respect he kind of deserves. Okay, sure, they've done little things like creating a Prost edition of the McLaren P1, but there's never been anything of real great significance. And it looks like he's even patched things up with Ferrari after representing them at the historic Dubai Grand Prix revival in 2023. Who would have thought that Prost might now be on better terms with Ferrari than McLaren? But it just seems so unnecessarily tense, especially as so many years have passed since. And I'm not sure whether this is down to Senna's family or estate or whatever, but whilst McLaren are so closely tied with the Senna name and brand, they probably can't be seen to be doing anything with Prost at the same time. I could be talking absolute rubbish, but that's just what I see anyway. It's probably still too much of a political and social minefield. It might even still hurt as well. Especially now with social media and being called out for thinking things that the bulk of people don't think. It's probably an area that McLaren just don't want to touch. Anyway, though, I do hope one day that McLaren, and also F1 on the whole, does give Alain Prost the recognition that he deserves. Because for any team to claim him as one of theirs, and he could even be used as a marketing tool, it just seems that he's being very underutilized right now. But teams doing this whole thing and keeping these past drivers involved is fantastic because it's a great way for younger generations to get a glimpse of what made F1 the thing it is today, and even what made the teams what they are today. And also for some older fans who may not feel as connected to the sport today as they once were, to see some of these old greats being associated with these teams serves as a great pick-me-up and a great way to kind of get them back involved in the sport again. But also from these ex-drivers' perspective, it's a great way for them to stay relevant and stay in the mind of fans and get some great coverage at the end of the day. Don't forget, they've still got bills to pay, and it's been a long time since they're driving, and they might even have their own little products and merchandise and bits and pieces to sell. Again, it's all lovely and nostalgic and everything, but at the end of the day, it's just money, 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 money. And so with that, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to some of the current drivers after they hang up the helmets. Fernando Alonso, for example, he's been around the block with various teams, and I'll always remember him in his blue and yellow Renault, but it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be rolling out the Fernando Alonso collection in their merchandise range in 10, 20 years' time. Or even Lewis Hamilton years from now, after his move from Mercedes to Ferrari. It's going to be interesting to see if he'll ever go home, maybe, to Mercedes. Or if Ferrari will embrace him and he'll just be seen in red forever and ever and ever. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there's a driver out there who's currently being underutilized and would be put to better use working or representing a team? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Give the video a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Cheers.